Hi team, it's Andy here and welcome to the 6th episode of the Lions Den podcast. We're very lucky to have Olympian, Commonwealth Games medalist, England Sevens, Wasps and Bath, Amy Wilson-Hardy with us today. So hi Amy, how are you doing?
Good morning, I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. As just discussed, getting a bit more depressed with being indoors and not being able to go outside and do as much outside. But they say the sun's coming back.
Let's hope, eh?
Right. So what have you been doing to keep yourself busy through lockdown?
Well, obviously, I've still been training of some form. It's not as fun when you can't have a ball in your hand and run around with your mates. But yeah, running sessions to do, kind of like use your imaginations, weight sessions with whatever you can find, like literally whatever you can find. Got a few new hobbies, one being gardening, which makes me feel really old, and then rollerblading. I've actually also ordered a kayak, which I'm sure like all of the proper kayakers that go up and down the Thames will be thrilled to hear that I'm going to be let loose. So yeah, just trying to like do little things that we can outside with lots of space and then keep training ticking over as well.
You mentioned briefly about your training. We're lucky. So we had Tom Bowen on from the men's sevens, and he talked us through some of the testing and some of the training we're doing at the moment. Does the men's and the women's sevens team mimic in what they're doing, or how is it the same? How's it different, I suppose?
I imagine a lot of it will cross over and be similar, but also it's that kind of same principle this time. It's getting that balance of kind of sessions that will challenge you, but also like keeping sane, for want of a better useful word, trying to add a bit of variety. And I think there is obviously more freedom in the sense that if we want to mix things up a bit within reason, we can, because it's more about just being physically fit right now.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that I'm interested to hear, everyone we've had on the podcast so far, and it was quite interesting to speak to Tom to see how it differs from, and I suppose you'll be closer to it because you've bounced between the Tyrrells and then back to sevens more recently than Tom played in the championship. But when we're speaking to the guys from the Premiership and from the Tyrrells Premiership, they're talking about doing like the Bronco test and those kind of things and those Bronco scores. But then it was quite interesting to hear from Tom that you do the same thing to work out maximum aerobic speed, so the mass running, but it's normally done on a 1,200 metre test. So just with 12 turns rather than 30 turns.
Yeah, I think obviously, again, that's not just 7:15 style, but it's also, there's so many varieties of testing you can do. Like we've stuck with the 400 and 1,200 for the last few years, but I remember when I first joined the programme, we used to do your anaerobic shuttle, and that was it. You had no kind of aerobic test as such. So obviously it's constantly evolving. 1,200 is the worst thing in the world. Like, honestly, I hate it. I'm not blessed aerobically, so I have to try and work on it. Put a ball in my hand, I'm fine, but I'll keep going. But yeah, there's something about that I literally can't. I must have done it. I mean, I'm getting old now. I must have done it so many times. Yet the dread that I have and I literally wind myself up so much every time we have it that I probably take off or add, at least 10 seconds onto my time just from the nervous energy that I've expended before. It's horrible. But yeah, I think obviously with 15s, like the Bronco, with a bit more change direction, a bit more stop-starty, makes more sense. I'm just using my initiative here. I imagine that's why they do it. But no more turns, thanks.
And just out of curiosity, because we've got quite a few, you've done a little bit of coaching with us before. You've got a lot of like aspiring young players in the looking to play in the men's and the women's game. If they were aiming to do something, if they want to do the 1,200 metre tests, what would be a time? They're probably not going to get anywhere near it just yet, but something to aspire to in the future. What are your times on those?
You don't want to know my times. I say that wouldn't be aspiring to anything of mine. If you're getting between 4 and 5 minutes, I know that's very open, but I think the thing is such, if you're blessed aerobically, you'll find it a lot less challenging, whereas some people will put in all the hard graft and do kind of be actually really strong in other aerobic tests, but that they just won't. So I think if you're going between 4 and 5, you're in a good place.
Okay, cool. And it's something that might be a bit more, because he talked about the through the GPS as well, with the max speed that you get clocked at. Is that something you feel like you can share with us? Something that's a bit more.
It's good because obviously GPS adds so much like competition into everything. The different athletes and their strengths always look at different things. So you have got your Deborahs, your Celias, your edge players that are just looking at that high speed. Like, did I get over there? Did I get there? Did I do it consistently? And then you've got kind of players, the workhorses in the middle, like me, who once was an edge player, but have since like steadily moved in, just looking at, is my meters per minute like at the top, because obviously you want to cover a high meters per minute to show you're working hard. Like, what's my total distance? So if I'm up there on the total distance and the high meters per minute, that's what I see as success. So now I've worked hard to do my job. And high speed meters, I think what probably my strength is to, I'm quite good at getting quite high speed meters over a period. So that doesn't necessarily mean sprinting as fast as you can. It's like a speed where you hit over consistently and work in that zone. So it could only be 6 meters per second, for example, compared to 9, but you're consistently being over in that zone. Yeah, it's not nice, but it's good. I mean, I love it. That's why I play sevens. Like, it's one of those weird feelings that it's hard to, unless you've experienced it, really explain. But it's that feeling that you literally couldn't give any more, and you walk off the training pitch being like, yeah, that was good. And it is good fun. At the time, I'm sure I wouldn't say that, but it is.
It's the feeling after. So it's like, I don't know, a lot of people might not be able to, especially wouldn't be able to compare to that, because they might play sevens, but playing sevens at an elite level is so much faster. But how would you describe it? If you could describe it to something else that other people might experience, is it like, absolutely like smashing yourself in the gym and, feeling like you can't walk, and then that after you have a shower, you're like, oh, that feels so great? Or what would you compare it to?
The thing is with sevens and any sport, it's all relative. So like we always say, it doesn't matter how fit you are, because you're still going to work to your maximum. So obviously it matters, but like there's no getting easier. And I think obviously a lot of sports can relate to that, because the fitter you are, the further you run, etc. But yeah, the best thing to compare it to is exactly like you said, knowing that you literally couldn't have given any more. And there's been a few games where I actually remember we qualified for Rio we were in Amsterdam, and we kind of made it. We qualified through the World Series, so we finished top 4, but we made it kind of hard work in the sense we left it to the last game, literally the last game of the whole World Series, and we had to. We went into the Amsterdam tournament and we were neck and neck with France and USA. We had a bigger points difference, but we knew that if we just beat those two teams, we were qualified. We'd had London the week before, and it had just been like a brutal season in terms of like, I know, like personally, I played a lot of minutes, and it was my first season of really getting played that much. Kind of, I'd get a couple of minutes break a tournament, and it was something completely new to me. And I just remember coming off the pitch after, obviously I was absolutely elated because we just qualified for the first Olympic Games, but I just burst into tears from exhaustion. I could barely walk. And I just remember like thinking I literally couldn't have given any more at that point. And I think like, yeah, although that's like an extreme case, if you have like a training session, you literally like, you almost get emotional that you just can't give any more. And whether it be like, it doesn't have to be running, it could be lifting as much as you physically possibly could, but knowing that you've pushed your body to that extent, and you do enjoy it at the time. It's not that you don't. It's a hard one to think about, but yeah, definitely that final whistle, you're like that's what I can say.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you've got to where you are now, and the memorable moments along the journey.
So I started playing rugby when I was 11. I was in year 6 and I played a tag rugby tournament. I went to quite a small school, and I played like every sport I could. And if you were half decent, you'd be in every team. It was that kind of situation. One of my friends actually almost like dragged me along really, but I was the kind of kid who did everything. So I was like, yeah, why not? My mum thought it would be like a 5-minute kind of thing. And then about 17 years later. Was it 17? Yeah, 17 years later, I'm still here. So played at Worthing. It was great because my mum's from a little village called Angring in Sussex, and that's where Worthing Rugby Club is. So every weekend I'd walk up to the club and literally spend hours there, be it playing or literally just being a menace, really. So it kept me out of trouble at least. I remember I was saying actually on another podcast the other day, when I first started, I'm pretty sure it was just under 17s, full stop. Well, that's what's crazy. My first game of rugby playing with girls at 17 when I was 11. I think don't want to get people in trouble for this, but obviously there's adaptations of the rules and stuff anyway. But I played my first game at prop, and over the years worked myself out. I was playing at centre by the time I was kind of playing decent rugby. It was when TDG first got formed, so I was part of the first talent development group with the RFU. That was when it was under 14s and under 17s by that point. So got my way into there, and that's kind of, I wouldn't say I necessarily took it more seriously then, because at that time I was still playing all sports, and I just played because I loved it. You have talks from different, I remember, I think it was Becky Essex coming into one of the TDG camps and talking to us about professionalism and diet and everything. And I think because of that, and because obviously that gave me aspirations, it meant when I went to senior rugby, I actually moved to Hove for a year before I went to uni, because they were playing championship rugby. So I wanted to push myself in that sense. And it was also at the time where kind of under 20s was approaching, and they obviously encourage you to play as high level as possible. So I went to Hove for a year and then got into the under 20s. And that's kind of where I was I never thought I'd be a sevens player at that point, but I wanted to play for proper England, make it to the top. And I was kind of barraged with quite a few ankle injuries, went to uni. So a lot of I think that was the first kind of setback in a sense, was a lot of my friends went straight from under 20s to the seniors. And whether it be because I wasn't good enough or because of injury, I was injured at the time, but obviously missed the boat for that one. I don't know whether if I wasn't, I would have got the call up. So enjoyed uni. Had a couple of years just playing. That's when I went to Bristol and played for Bristol. I was playing loads and loads of rugby. Got in a lot better shape, was training. Susie Appleby took over as Bristol head coach. I got a few again, a lot of my friends were getting called up for the England Development Sevens side at this point, and I didn't. So I was just it's fine, I'll just keep my head down, keep working hard. So I'm not going to mention a name, but there was a coach that never believed in me in the TDG, and he went on to be quite high up in the RFU coaching system. And I remember I always wanted to prove him wrong. And I remember this game, I was he was going to be there, and I knew that. And I knew I was playing good rugby at the time. I was in the best shape I'd been in, kind of lost my puppy fat and actually started having some proper muscle. And I remember this game just having so much fun and just playing really well. And actually, to be fair to him, he came up to me, he's that's the best I've seen you play. And I just remember thinking, but from the back of that, I started to get noticed for the 15s, and then also Susie Appleby at Bristol had encouraged me to go to the Sevens Open trials. So I went along, and that was, as I mentioned before, when we did the anaerobic shuttle as a fitness test, and managed to somehow smash that. And I remember Barry coming up to me, Barry Maddox, who was coaching at the time, being we want you to come along to a couple of development sessions. And then the next thing I knew, I was being invited to train with the main squad with sevens. So suddenly, from kind of feeling like I was behind my mates that year and we're seeing everyone else excel, I had my ticket to my first sevens cap, and then also got invited to go on the 15s summer tour. Went from thinking that I wasn't quite there to I'm going to get caps in both disciplines like that. And again, like I said, I never thought I'd be a sevens player. So that was kind of this is going to be cool. This is fun. And it was in Marbella as well. So literally it was
yeah. When that happened, what age were you when you broke through?
I think a 21 going on 22. So I'd missed, like I said, kind of like a year from being under 20s. And had 4 ankle operations in a quite short space of time. So I think that set me back a bit and knocked my confidence. But I knew I've always been determined and very stubborn. So I knew what I wanted. So I knew I just had to be patient and kind of work hard and hard graft. And hopefully that would be enough to show what I could do. And then obviously since 2013, it just went kind of crazy. Haven't really looked back. So obviously, but now it's a lot kind of, you're either 7s or 15s, and it still was, you were selected for more 7s or more 15s at the time, but there was kind of a priority. So obviously 2014 was the Women's World Cup, which was 15. So all of the kind of the main focus went to that. And then I was selected in the EPS, but as a 7s player. So I literally had the best year ever. Because obviously the big names of rugby at the time were all training for a World Cup. I got to literally travel around the world in these amazing locations. I mean, Dubai was my first World Series in 2013, and got plunged in the deep end, managed, because we were an experienced development kind of squad, got a lot of game time for what I should have been doing, really. And then I think that just made me learn, and I found a love for 7s. And I think it was thanks to that year kind of, that then when the following year contracts and having a chance to be a professional rugby player came up, I was in a really good position to put my hat in the ring. And I remember actually I was waking up from ankle surgery when I got the email saying, would you like to be a professional rugby player?
You mentioned quite a few times like ankle injuries and ankle surgery and stuff in there. How did you cope with that after each time? And also, what do you do now to prevent that from happening again, I suppose?
Yeah, I think the hardest battle injury-wise I had was probably the 15s World Cup year with my hamstring, because I was contracted as a 15s player, but played a bit of 7s as well. So I tore my hamstring earlier on in the season, grade 2. It wasn't too bad, but it meant that I missed all of the autumn internationals. And I was very conscious at the time that like I was a bit of a wild card in terms of the 15 selection, because they'd picked me on my 7s form. I hadn't played internationally since my first cap. Yeah. They were transitioning me from centre to wing. So all of this, like, I needed to play. And obviously with the end goal being selection for the World Cup, like you overthink a lot. So got back from that. Obviously missed the autumn internationals, but got fit for the Six Nations, which I absolutely loved, and it was amazing. And I got a lot of game time, played a lot, so did that. But then went back and played a 7s tournament and did my hamstring again, but a lot worse. Yeah, I was like, it's getting very close to World Cup time. And there's a summer tour to New Zealand, which I'm sure you'll remember, which again I missed. So another opportunity to play. At that point, I still hadn't been to the Southern Hemisphere to play, and so I was like, oh, come on, for goodness sake. But yeah, I think that was tough, because I'm an introvert anyway, but I think I very much like isolated myself, and I was in the intensive rehab unit at Bisham Abbey, which is amazing opportunity. Like, I know I can speak for a lot of the girls that it's massively helped them, and it's such a professional outlook, and kind of, if you're going to get fit, it's through the guys there. But you're there with 2, maximum 3 other athletes, and I was there for 6 weeks, I think, in total. Had Claire Allen with me some of the time, which was great, and actually made a really good friend in cyclists now, bobsleigh and Vicky Williamson. So like, you meet amazing people, but you're not with a squad. I kind of isolated myself a bit from the squad, and obviously they went to New Zealand, had fantastic results, and when you're not part of that, that's really tough. So I think I knew my hamstring was doing great, like I was recovering really well, but from a kind of like a mental outlook, like that's where I struggled. Obviously I did manage to get fit, but I kind of never felt like I reached my potential that I could have done that year. And that was partly because of like the physical injury, but also because of that kind of squad gelling that you get. I had it in the Six Nations, because obviously we got the Grand Slam, which was amazing, and I felt like completely part of that. But then the other times I missed so many like amazing opportunities that were like, you become part of a team by obviously experiencing that together. And still, like, I'm so fortunate that I managed to get the nod for the World Cup, and like, obviously an amazing opportunity and experience. And I don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved it. But you always just wonder when, like, if I'd had a smooth year, what would have happened.
I think a lot of people don't realise, do they? They think about the time out of playing, what it does to you, physically if you don't keep on top of it. But actually, sometimes the hardest things is the mental side. Because imagine when you're in a team environment like you are, there'll be opportunities where you get together as a team. But the best time to get together as a team is when you're out running around on the training paddock, and that's where a lot of the joking around and having most of the fun happens. So we're always trying to do with our the strength training that we're now doing in some schools, and we just put an online program together, is about when it comes to September, or when it comes to the start of season being back, how can your body be conditioned enough, even from the right the way from the amateur level, to make sure that you don't miss out. And we don't know what the aftermath is going to be of like the mental side of this after we come out of the lockdown and the coronavirus stuff. So we want to maximise people getting back to playing sport and being ready to play sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely. I think even, like you said, even before lockdown, like, we do so much behind the scenes to, like, especially because we do have a small squad. If we've got 4 people out with niggles, then that makes a huge difference to kind of what our training looks like. So it's not only that, but it's also trying to make sure those injured players are included as much as they can be, and keeping that dialogue going with them. And I also think, like, I don't mean this to come across as bad, but like, obviously you play sport with some of your best mates, but some people you're just put with, and there's going to be people you get on better with than others. But when you're actually competing and playing and competing against each other and training, they are your mates. You get on with them. Like, it keeps that kind of like strong link between each other going, even if they're not your favourite person on the pitch, you do anything for them. So if you don't have that, it's sometimes, I guess it's easy for you to either like take someone out of your life completely because you don't have that bond, like, or just isolate yourself and just kind of like, well, I'm going to put my head down and keep going and it'll be fine. And again, like lockdown, I think, like I was saying earlier, initially we thought it'd be a couple of weeks, and now what are we, 11, 12 weeks in? It's going to be huge when we go back. And I think it's like getting used to a lifestyle where you wake up in the morning and you're like, well, I've got to train at some point, I've got to do this, can do that, to suddenly be like so regimented as professional sport is. It's going to be a huge challenge. So yeah, I think the mental health side is going to be far bigger than the physical after all of this is over.
Yeah. Do you think any of that will transfer through? Because you read a lot about people changing the environment within professional and elite sport through actually getting players to do more for themselves so that they can do more for themselves on the pitch. Do you see any of taking any positives out of this to allowing you maybe a bit more freedom to do different things, or how do you see it working going back?
I feel I've always been quite switched on to it, probably because I've played in an era where the game wasn't professional, and I've been dropped and kind of had that side where you suddenly lose everything in that professional bubble, and just being a bit older and a wiser head. But I think it will definitely kind of highlight to people that it can all go like that. Like, that is the brutality of professional sport, whether it be in control or out of control. And also kind of just that kind of awareness that there's a lot more to life. I think in the past I used to always get a bit scared about saying this because I felt like it was me saying that rugby wasn't everything, but it's not. Like, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it and I couldn't imagine my life without it. And that doesn't mean that when I'm training and doing everything, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to give absolutely everything I've got to it. But you've got a family, you've got friends, and it's not until you can't see people that you realise how much you actually miss them and value them. So it's like those weekends where maybe, it's a rest weekend and you need to rest, and that's important. But can you do that at your best mate's house? Probably, and see them. I think for me, that's definitely something like I'm going to make sure I put more time aside for the people close to me, because I think it's easy to get sucked into this professional bubble, and yeah, just like really nailing down what you are going to do after rugby, because we don't know what's going to happen. Like, if there's any time where we have literally no idea what's going to happen, is now. Just got to try and control everything you possibly can, because otherwise you could end up in a dark hole somewhere and not be in a good place at all.
I think you're right. It's something you touched on there in terms of, some of the traits and I suppose habits and skills that rugby or other team sports give you is, being able to get on with everyone when the time's right and being able to do it. You don't have to spend your free time with people, but when you're in a place and you have to work with them, for example, it's important to respect them and do stuff for them so that, what goes around comes around. What else do you think that you've gained from your career within rugby that's going to help, with that transition to life outside of professional rugby?
I think is really important is that people aren't disposable, and I think that's a real issue in a lot of businesses at the moment, especially kind of like big city businesses. There's a lot of thought around, if someone's not doing a good enough job, I'm going to fire them and get somebody else, as opposed to actually I'm going to invest in this person. And I think like you see that in rugby, in the sense that sometimes there's always that player that comes in and you're like, that's interesting. I don't know if I'd have selected them, which is brutal, but everyone's had that thought. So don't tell me that you haven't. And then you see it and you're like, no, like, of course, like, obviously you're like, of course, there must be something. So I'm going to it'll be exciting to see what they can do. And you see it and you see it and you see like investment. And that's one good thing about sport, is that normally you've got at least a year to prove yourself, whereas you wouldn't necessarily own a business. So it's been great to see some of like the wild cards. And I think probably I was one of them. So I'm sure a lot of people are like, what the hell is she doing here? And then just having the opportunity and investment into somebody and showing, so they can show their potential. So I think, in terms of business, it's like, I think it's really important for businesses to see, and whether that be like, and hopefully like sports people can kind of transfer this mindset when they do, if they do go into kind of businesses, that you can work on someone, really make them feel valued and feel part of a team, and then they can excel. If you isolate them and don't give them opportunity, then of course they're not going to reach their potential. But also, obviously, like the classic kind of answer for that question is that just competitive, stubborn, determined mindset, which I think it's got me a long way in life, especially the competitive and stubborn side. But I think anyone with that attribute is hopefully gonna do something and get somewhere, because you just don't like people telling you no. And for me, like, that challenge is like more than I need to go out. And I think that's the same with 99% of athletes, probably.
Yeah, generally, like you said earlier, is normally, a lot of the athletes and also successful business owners and just successful people in general have someone that's fueled the fire for them, someone that hasn't believed in me. So, you know what, I'm going to show you. Last week, I spoke to Anna Capeless at Queen's, and she had a pretty funny story for us in Japan, where they used to take out the air from all the balls at the end of every session and then pump them all up again at the beginning of the next session. And she still could never work out why they did it. And I just thought it was a hilarious story. I was just wondering if anything along your rugby journey has happened.
I always think that you get the best stories from the most bizarre places you go to. Like, I mean, you see the great side of it when you see kind of like when we go to Dubai and Cape Town and all these amazing places, and you see all that. But we've also been to some very unusual places. So there's one tournament. It was in Okinawa, which is on an island. It's Japan, but some random little island place, a part of it, the most obscure place ever. Apparently one of the healthiest places, I think I'm right in saying the healthiest place to live, but I think it's because no one lives there. So there's like an army base one end, and then the other end. So we went to this place, and honestly, the nearest kind of coffee shop, if you could even call it that, was like 45 minutes walk away. We were in this hotel, which was huge, but completely empty apart from the teams that were there. It was us, an Australian team, Canadian team, Japan, really Fiji, like a really bizarre mix of teams. I think it's about 5 of us. And there's a yam factory, which was like the highlight of the everyone went to this yam factory, which was just opposite, which is literally just like these purple sweet potatoes that they were obsessed with. But the hotel was literally kind of like next to this caged pitch where was this grand tournament. And everyone was feeling a bit low. And our S&C at the time was Katie James, who is one of a kind, she's absolutely amazing human being, but she's just got this absolutely incredible way of picking up the mood of people. She's so astute to kind of like emotions, and see everyone was feeling down, everyone was feeling tired. We were like, why are we here? Honestly, I just fed up, like nothing to do in this random place. The food was just interesting, and beds were so uncomfy. Literally everyone was just like, a few niggles, people were like being held together with tape. And she's like, right, we're getting on the bus. And I was like, we haven't got a bus, the picture's literally there. And she made us down our corridor make this bus. So we rode to the game. This was, we're about to play, I mean, it was international in the sense that we're playing another nation. We're playing as England, but obviously it was a trading tournament. But there we were, like an international sevens team, going through the hotel, pretending to be a bus. She was the bus driver. And we went all the way to the pitch, just pretended to be this bus. And I just remember that. And everyone started smiling. And then we ended up playing a blimmin' great game of rugby and getting to the final. And that, like, yeah, just completely exceeding like kind of where we thought we were at the time. And I think it's those kind of, yeah, it's kind of had to be their moment in a way. But I just think like it's those little things that just stay with you. And I remember us just being in absolute hysterics about us all going through this blimmin' hotel that was just miserable and draining, just pretending to be a blimmin' school bus as we went to play Australia in the semi-final of a rugby tournament. So yeah.
Well, you need those characters though, don't you? Within any team, you need those people that can pick you up, and that's quality. Okay, cool. Last question from me is, well, it's more of advice out there. So if you could go back to, the 11-year-old you, or the time where you were, aspiring to play for England, or aspiring to play to the highest level that you could possibly play, knowing what you know now, what would you tell the younger version of yourself?
I think it always sounds really cheesy when I say it, but never forget to enjoy yourself and don't get carried away with kind of like yes, I've obviously spoken about hard graft and pushing yourself to your limits to get what you want. But I think unless you're enjoying it along the way, there's no point in any of that. And I think I can speak from experience because I probably had one season of my career which I didn't enjoy. But I think if I'd been able to take a step back and think like, what do I need to do to enjoy rugby and really make the most out of it, I wouldn't have put myself in the position that I did. And actually I ended up losing my contract at the end of that season. And it took me going back to Wasps for a couple of months and kind of finding a love for rugby again to push through that and obviously get my contract back. But now I'm very much along the lines of taking a step back and am I enjoying myself? Am I loving it? And I'll play the best rugby when I do that. So I think, yes, be professional, do all the extra things that you have to get to where you want to be, where you need to be. But always now and again, just take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And are you enjoying it? And are you getting the most out of it? And if you're not, what can you do to change that?
Yeah, I think that's such an important message. You say it's cheesy. I think it's one of those things that you feel like when you say it, but interestingly, when you speak to most players at the elite level like you are, it's a similar message. It's a similar message with all this. And if you're not enjoying anything in life, they always say if you're not enjoying a job, find a new job.
Yeah.
It's that same kind of thing. It's the same within sport. If you're not enjoying that sport, there's plenty of other sports out there that you can go and try, and there will be one that's right for you. So I think that's a brilliant message to finish on. So I just want to say thanks so much for joining us on the podcast, Amy. Hopefully you get back to some normality soon and you can get back to competing. But if not, just take care and obviously stay safe.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's been great having me on.